to Teresa to kick us off on the content.
Great, thanks, Claire. So the thing that we all have in common across all of the presenters, we're all connected to the GLOBE program in some way. And the GLOBE program is an international worldwide science and engineering program, science and education program. It's sponsored by NASA and supported by NOAA, National Science Foundation, and the U.S. Department of State. It is over 30 years old and in 127 countries with tens of thousands of educators, students, and citizen scientists. If you go to the next slide, the GLOBE program focuses on protocols to monitor the Earth's environment, your local environment, and how it might be changing, and a free database to store and access measurements. These are across the different Earth spheres: atmosphere, the biosphere, pedosphere, which is the soil, the ground, and the hydrosphere. So looking at the Earth as a system. And there are over 40 protocols. But if you go to the next slide, there are 4 protocols that don't require any equipment other than your mobile phone. And many of you may have also participated in the eclipse. That's a temporary tool in the Globe Observer app that's visible when there is a total solar eclipse somewhere in the world. The 4 tools are clouds, mosquito habitat mapper, land cover, and trees. That you don't need anything but your cell phone or mobile phone to use. And there's you just download the app from the App Store or Google Play, register for an account, and you'll get an email with the link to confirm your account. And there's one thing that these 4 tools have in common. They all provide on-the-ground observations that can help to complement or to interpret NASA's view from space. And so if you go to the next slide, just wanted to note several of the things that you're going to hear about today are included in our toolkit for informal educators. We've got the link there. We'll come back to it at the end, a place where you can find all of these. So I'm going to hand it off to Rosalba next from our clouds team.
Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, so as Teresa mentioned, Clouds is one of those protocols that you can do with the Globe Observer app. So we certainly hope that you will download that app. And yeah, I want to share about some of the resources that have to do with Globe Clouds. I am happy to share that the NASA Globe Clouds team has been collaborating with the Queens Public Library in New York. So we've been working with several librarians that have been successfully implementing different NASA Globe Clouds activities in different branches that are part of the Queens Public Library system. And I want to highlight some of the activities and resources. So first, I would like to talk to you about the Sky Window. I also want to share about the elementary globe storybooks, also about an activity that we call Cloudscape. And then my favorite is the cloud dance. So before moving on to the next slide, I do want to share about this image that we have on the screen now. So that's a photo where Rose works at Paisley Park. And so maybe it's difficult to see in the photo, maybe it's too small, but in the middle of the window of the library, Rose placed 2 sky windows. And I will let you know more about this resource on the next slide. So the Sky Window. So basically, this is a tool that you can download. It's available in English and in Spanish. And so I have one here with me. And so this is a tool that you can use to help you make cloud observations, identify different types of clouds, pay attention to the shade of blue that you have in your sky. Also pay attention to the sky visibility, which can tell us a little bit about air quality. But safety first. If you're going to make a cloud observation, we ask you and beg you, please be safe. Never look directly at the sun. Always also remind everyone around you, if they're going to make a cloud observation, do not look directly at the sun. But yeah, so you can use this tool. Basically, you download it, and then you remove the center, that card at the center of the sky window, and then you can point it to the sky, you look through, and then you compare what you see in your sky with what's around in the sky window. So you have images of different types of clouds so that you can compare them with what you see in your sky. And that's how you can more easily identify different types of clouds. Also, on the other side, there are different shades of blue. There are also some pictures of sky visibility, which can give you some hints about air quality. And then once you have all that information, you can submit that data about clouds to GLOBE. And then NASA and scientists at other organizations as well can use the data. So when you make these ground observations, you can help us have a more comprehensive view of what's happening on Earth. And I could tell you much more about globe clouds, but of course we have limited time. But I hope that you will download this tool and that you will also download the Globe Observer app. And let's move on to the next slide. So I also want to share about Elementary Globe. So Elementary Globe has modules that introduce learners to various aspects of Earth science, including air quality, the climate, clouds, the Earth system, seasons, soils, and water. And each of these modules includes a storybook. So it's based on science, but it has a fictional narrative. So they're very, very engaging. So for example, on the screen now, we have the cover of the Globe Clouds storybook. The name is Do You Know That Clouds Have Names? And so it will engage students in learning the different types of clouds. And another very cool thing about these storybooks is that they are available in different languages. So I hope that you will also consider downloading these storybooks. Next slide. And so an activity that goes very well in parallel with the storybook that has to do with clouds is this cloudscape. So the idea here is that learners can build a sky scene ordering cloud types by altitude. So they can be reading the book and at the same time use inexpensive materials like cotton balls, different types of paper, different types of fabric, tissues, and so on to build their cloudscape. And of course, they can also describe this cloudscape verbally, so they can also practice language skills, getting some science vocabulary, and so on. But next, I do want to turn it over to Rose, who is going to put everyone to dance.
So if I could get the view to be me instead of this, if that's possible. So while that transition is happening, I'm going to ask the chat to just start putting some words that they think of clouds. Like I say clouds, what kind of words are going to come to your mind? You just put it into the chat. Okay, I see a fluffy, wispy, puffy. Okay, gray, feathery, looming, peaceful, cotton balls. Whoa, we are good with these words. You can tell we're librarians. Perfect. So whenever I do this with the kids, that's always the first question I ask, because oftentimes we already have words for clouds. They just aren't necessarily the more sciencey words. Are we going to be able to get me on the big one? If not, I can do it in the small one. Claire, yes, no, maybe so.
I think only if actually, yes, I can do that. I'm going to redo how we share it. Okay.
There we go. Okay. So let me back up. Okay. Am I still able to be heard? Can people still hear me when I'm over here? Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to focus on the first word of fluffy, right? And when we think of fluffy, we got like these big balls over here, right? So this is going to be a cumulus. 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 Okay, and you guys remember that like really like flat and expansive one? So for this guy, we're going to be doing a stratus, okay? And like normally when you do a jumping jack, you do like this, but instead we're going to be expanded with the stratus. Okay, and I saw a whole bunch of people say wispy, and I love wispy. And so for wispy, we're gonna focus on our fine motor. We're gonna do really, 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 really tiny with our fingers because we're gonna go whisk. And you'll notice this is super helpful because these words do not roll off your tongue. And trying to get the little kids to say these words is not easy. So oftentimes I've noticed they'll look up and try to figure out the word. And their mouth will start like trying to do it. It's just not happening. So you'll see them look up and they'll go like this. And you're like, ah, I see you're looking for a cumulus. Or they'll start like this. And it's like, ah, you're trying to do a stratus, right? So it really helps bridge the gap between their ability to say the word and their ability to tell the different cloud type. Because if you're able to bridge those gaps, they can participate in the app and with their family before they're able to actually say the words, right? Now, when I was doing this with the kids, they wanted more. So we were already dancing in the garden and they're like, I'm bored of this, I want more. So let's see if anybody in the chat can find the next word that I'm thinking of. So when the clouds get really dark and all of a sudden you're looking up and it's wet on your cheek, what word do you think you would use for this? Cumulonimbus. And rain and precipitation. Look at this. We are librarians. Okay, so the word that I would have them work with is precipitation. We can also do cumulonimbus. So for this, you're gonna clap for thunder. Make sure you can see my hands. Clap for thunder and rain it down. Clap for thunder and rain it down. And rain. Okay. Now, if you also noticed on that sky window, there's another type of cloud. And I'm gonna see if the chat can figure out this one too. Okay, so it's made from something that's in the sky, and it is not a bird, and it is not Superman. Somebody's been doing their homework. Contrails, yes, and contrails are made from planes, right? They're not bird, they're not Superman, they're a plane. So we're gonna announce, rev your engines! Contrails! Contrails! Now you might be sitting here and wondering, but I gotta color my world theme. How are we gonna make this colorful? See if anybody can think of a colorful thing that might have a pot of gold at the end of it. Rainbow! Yeah, there we go. So for a rainbow, we're gonna open our arms like this and go rainbow, 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 rainbow. So yes, we could go back to the slides. Oh, thank you for that. Okay, so well, we're looking at these clouds right now. When you see cumulus, what motion, I know that we can only see the top people right now, but percentages, what motion do we think for cumulus? Everybody could just try doing it with their hands. When we see stratus, what, yeah, like a spinning fist, right? Okay, so stratus, what kind of motion are we thinking for this guy? Do we have this guy? Stratus. And for cirrus? Okay, so let's go to the next one. Next slide. Okay, precipitation. Clap for thunder and rain it down. Clap for thunder and rain it down. Okay, and contrails are always fun because contrails are, I've been standing still for too long, right? Because they're like, why are you making me stand? So by this point, they want to be moving around. Bird airplane, and then rainbows. Okay, and the next slide, please. Okay, so I was doing this when I was in the garden, right? And the garden is a perfect opportunity to talk about science, like the whole time. When you have what weather is going on, you have the fact that the plants change every week that you go out into it. You have flowers that are blooming. You have the ability to identify all of them. So this just stemmed very naturally for me, right? Like I was already doing dance related things in that space, such as acorn, acorn tree, which I will show you after this. Yes, sensory engaged learners. Perfect, right? That is right where I am. This chat is on point. So when I was given this Uno game to be able to practice with it, it had on it these cloud dances. And I'm like, you know what? I think that it would be more fun to just expand on these dances. So we did story time in the morning where we had all of that like fun books and everything. And then later that day, we'd go out into the garden and it'd always start off with, okay, so who wants to help NASA? Right? Because they're like, wait a second, I can't help them. I'm a kid. It's like, no. Anybody can help. That's like the power of citizen science. You do not just have to sit there and be like, oh, this might be something that happens in the future. Like you are a scientist right here, right now, and NASA needs your help. And of course, like when they hear that they're helping, they're more interested in doing it, right? So they do the little dance and then you're looking up and you're scrolling through the app because I always do one round with them and then I encourage their families to do it after, right? And that's always done by pure votes, right? Because you're always going to have one kid who's like, oh, I think it's more of a pale blue. And the other one's like a little bit more of a light blue, right? So it's like, okay, whoever gets the most amount of votes is going to go in mine. If you're really passionate about it, you'll be able to talk your grown-up into having another app and uploading it there. The other advantage of having just the practice of doing this every week and looking up and seeing the clouds is it got the kids like really interested in just citizen science like regularly. So the kids like, you're in a garden, they're gonna pick up bugs. And so they have a bug in their hand. They're like, what's this? I'm like, I don't know. And it's like, well, we do it with the clouds, but why can't we find out what's going on with these bugs? So I also got the iNaturalist app. So this is also just like, it's a jumping off point, right? Of a whole bunch of fun things that you can do. So I also, if we could go back to me, because I do want to show everybody Acorn, Acorn Tree, because these dances are things that I've used the cloud dance with class visits. I've used it during dancing games. And the reason why is that I've already been practicing with things like this, right? So with Acorn, Acorn Tree, you're going to squat down like this first. You're going to explain that we're going to chant Acorn, Acorn, Acorn together. And then when I scream tree, we're bursting up like a tree. Okay. So you go acorn, 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 tree. Now you might be wondering, that's only acorn, acorn, tree. I have done magma, magma, lava. I have done pinecone, fir. If you want to look around and see like, oh, they want to do a pumpkin one. Okay. You start off as a seed and you practice vine, 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 pumpkin. Right? It's the limit is your creativity, right? Like if you understand like the very basic element of the science that it's magma before it's lava, right? That's an acorn before an oak tree and things like that. Yeah, squat, 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 jump, right? And you're just teaching that there's transition, right? And you're teaching that things are different and that like there's value in knowing that there are different types of clouds. There's value in knowing that there's different types of trees, right? I hope I'm not going over time. If we could do the last slide of mine, the additional resources. Yeah, so one more slide. Okay, there we go. Okay. Thank you. So fiction is super important. I think that we, as librarians, all understand this. but having kids be able to go straight from I'm looking at a thing in the sky to getting the word like cumulus stratus cirrus, having a fiction element helps once again bridge that gap, right? So Little Cloud by Eric Carle, like having kids think about, oh, clouds come in different shapes, right? Like Little Cloud and Lady Wind with Toni Morrison, like it has a lot of just different visualizations about like the importance of clouds and all of just like the beautiful, wonderful, happy things, right? Because clouds should be happy. What you're doing should be fun, should be energetic. And then I also 100% cannot leave this without spotlighting Smologies. So Smologies is, well, Ologies is a podcast by Allie Ward. She's a science communicator, and she gets a whole bunch of scientists and she just interviews them. Ologies is not kid friendly. There's a lot of stuff in there that's not friendly for kids. That's why she created Smologies. So they're shorter and they are 100% like for educators, for libraries, things like that. And you can encourage parents to listen to it on their drive back from the library. You can have it like running in the background while you're doing like little tiny things like clipping something or pouring water. Like it's just a very, very useful resource is Smologies. And passing it on, because that is my thing.
Hi, everyone. Andrew Clark. I'm going to present the Color a Pixel poster activity. It's a rasterized take on your classic color by numbers, and it's set up specifically for NASA satellite imagery, but you can really use it for any imagery that can relate to a sense of place or conversations that you want to have, stories about location there at your library. But really, the output is a 3x2 poster that you can color in with standard Crayola colors. We've done a few iterations so far, and we found that it's good for bringing people back to speak with you. It's hands-on, it's easy to use, and it's adaptable for a lot of different scenarios, which Teresa will describe after I give a quick run through. So I've included links to posts describing it and where the resources are. And I'm going to run through some of the pre-generated activities, but you can really use your own activity if you feel so inclined. So next slide, please. So linked from the blog post and also in these slides, we have a page of about a dozen activities that have already been prepared for you. And I just wanted to note that if you're trying to get just the minimum, there is a legend that maps the colors that are on this Color a Pixel activity to standard Crayola crayon names. So if you print out that and either the poster or the multi-page option, that's all you really need. But there are some other images that I think provide some extra context and might be useful for different scenarios. So next slide. So each one of these images we started from either the Landsat image gallery or a USGS Landsat image. So if you want a little more information about where the image was collected, you can follow that link to see something like this. Next slide. And so it takes an original, whatever the original colors are that you of the region that you've selected, if you're making your own, it'll capture the original view, which looks something like this in the case of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Next slide. But then it rasterizes it to just a very simplified view like you're seeing here. So that's only 72 by 48 pixels. And on a 3x2 poster, each pixel is a square that's 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. And then the colors get mapped to standard Crayola colors. So this is what a completed poster might look like once it's completed. Next. And this is one of the kind of additional reference images so that you can perhaps talk about the importance of resolution in an image, angular resolution in satellites in particular. The difference between what we see here and what we saw in the last slide, it's all the same color space that it's being mapped to, but this is at the same resolution as the original image versus just the low resolution version that makes for easy coloring. Next slide, please. And for each activity, there are 2 custom legends. So the label map that I mentioned earlier is all 120 colors in a set. Each activity does have a subset of those colors that it actually uses, and so those are pulled out either in a named legend like this, or next slide, in a frequency legend like this. So you have a sense of how many squares are colored with a given color from the set. So if you were to be making your own, this can kind of give you a sense of, is it overloaded too much with one color? Am I going to be able to make this work? Next slide. And this is a preview of what the output is if you select the poster output. In the back is the full grid, 72 by 48 squares, each a half-inch square. And then just an inset to show you what the individual squares look like. Next slide. And this is a view of the multi-page option. So if you were perhaps in a classroom setting or you wanted to hand out different things for people to complete on their own, this provides that as an option as well. So it prints out a bunch, 24 sheets, each with a 6 by 6 inch space labeled with row and column coordinates that can then be recombined at the end to create a singular view. And so that is the super quick run through. And Teresa will share a little bit more about actually using this in different environments.
Thank you, Andrew. So if you go to the next slide, we've tried out this activity and it's been updated in response to all the feedback we've gotten at least 4 or 5 times. So one way we've used it is in a game night activity, and you can see here adults love doing this activity. A lot of times you think of these activities, things that are fun and STEAM activities for kids, and certainly it's for kids, but this is great for all ages. And so I used it here at a game night where we had several activities that people could rotate through. Some people would sit, we had 4 chairs, and they'd color for a bit, some longer than others, and then move on to another activity. If you were serious about your coloring and did it dedicatedly, it'd probably take about 1 to 2 hours. And one thing that we did was we posted the final colored in grid next to the original image with some information about it. And one tip, print it on matte paper when you print this. So because you're going to be coloring it in. If you go to the next slide, another idea, someone in the chat had mentioned this is a good passive activity. We've used it as a station tabletop activities, and post the legend next to it with just the crayons that you're using and something engaging to get people to understand what they want to do. Most people pick it up pretty quickly, color by number. It's a mystery NASA satellite image. Match the crayon to the number on the poster, color in the pixels to reveal the image of a location from space. And one thing I've done, I've given people clues. I did this at an event where we weren't quite able to fill the whole thing in, but enough that I could hold it up and ask people, are there questions you want to ask me, clues you'd like me to give you? And they guess the location. So some ideas start with a few of the pixels colored in so people get the idea. Leave the poster up for an event or over a period of time. You could post some clues to generate interest. And as I said, post the answer with the original image and link to learn more. So the pre-generated activities that Andrew showed you, there's a link to the original image, and most of these have story or more information from NASA with the image. So if you go to the next slide, you can upload your own images. And on that slide, Andrew has a link to the tool. You upload your image and you can see how it looks and generate all of these on your own. And we know a lot of libraries that like these color a pixel activities. So that was the motivation to do this. So other tips, print the key for your image and just the crayons for that image. I made the mistake the very first time we tested this to put a whole crayon pack out, and people thought I could pick my colors to color in my pixel. So this shows a pixelated image of San Francisco that uses 20 different colors from the key. It's based on an original Landsat 9 image. If you go to the next slide, more nitty-gritty things. I never knew that Crayola packs their crayons randomly. So when you get a box, the first thing I did was to sort them by color, and you sort them by the label on the crayon, and that'll get them into a quick sort. If you go to the next slide, and there is a master key that there's a link to that on the links that Andrew provided. And because I'm doing this activity multiple times, I labeled my crayons. It makes it a lot easier to do. So I sorted, it's just based on the 120 Crayola crayon set. And so I sorted them according to the key. And that key is also a template for creating crayon labels. So if you go to the next slide, I'll show you what I did. So you cut out the label, and glue sticks work best. You can also use tape, but it wraps all the way around the crayon. And if you couldn't tell before, Andrew is an engineer by heart, and he created these so they go exactly. So it wrapped it around. So you could also just write the number on the crayons, like in that picture there, just use a fine line Sharpie to do that, or don't number them and just post the legend with the crayon names and numbers with those crayons. So it takes a little bit longer to do the activity with that. So if you go to the next slide, there is my box of 120 Crayola crayons labeled. Let us know any suggestions or how you use this activity. We've got an email there, and we're on the StarNet community of practice. So share your tips for using this. Tell us how you used it. And if you find an image that works really well, let us know, and we'll add it to our page of pre-generated activities. And I'm going to hand it off to Alicia, who's going to talk about globe art activities.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Teresa. So the image on the right side of the screen here is the front page for a resource guide for libraries that my office developed with input from our partners. The purpose was to connect globe activities with reading and simple art projects. So the guide is broken into sections by audience type: children, teens, and intergenerational. There are multiple activities for each audience, and then also some additional lists for picture books and activities by topic. Each activity includes a materials list and a plan with details and links to other resources that will help you. There are suggestions for books to read with each of the activities, but of course, if you have your own favorite books that are related to the topic, you should incorporate those. So in the next few slides, I'm going to share one activity for each audience. So yeah, go ahead to the next slide. So first, for children's programming, we have this Seasons and Colors story time. So there are a couple of different readings along with this activity, but also we have on the right side of the screen this worksheet that you could print out for each participant. This is from the Elementary Globe, the Colors of the Seasons activity. So you would print this and take the kids outside for a walk, and then count how many things of each color they see. Then you come back inside and have them do something that I would find really impossible to do, which is to vote for their favorite season. Like, how do you do that? And then move along to the art portion of this activity, which uses a NOAA paint by number map activity. So very similar to the color a pixel activity that we just heard about. The kids will use cotton swabs to place dots of paint around the North American continent, and that will represent plant growth during different seasons based on satellite observations. And then once you're done with that, or if you need a movement break sometime during the activity, you can dance along to an animated video called The Seasons Song. So next slide, please. So here's the teen programming example. This is Trees and Kindness Rocks that came from LaSalle Public Library. So you can go outside with the Globe Observer app to measure tree height. Depending on how many teens are in your group, you'll want a few different trees to observe. The app is really helpful. It walks you through the whole process. It tells you to stand a certain distance away from the tree, and then you take pictures of the bottom of the tree and the top of the tree, and then you walk towards it to measure the distance from where you took the pictures to where the tree is. And then the app does a bunch of math, and it tells you the height of the tree. So that's really fun. Then you come back inside to do the art activity. Each teen can make their own kindness rock that represents their tree. So the picture here on the right side shows some examples of those. The bottom rock, you probably can't see it too well, but it shows a painting of the tree, and then the text is the latitude and longitude coordinates. They could also add the height of the tree on this rock if there was space. So the next slide, please. For the intergenerational programming, here's an activity to learn about clouds that was created from the Los Angeles Public Library. They made use of this cloud in a jar activity from Globe Observer that demonstrates how clouds form. So again, you can provide this worksheet shown on the right here to all the participants. It includes the steps to follow and a space to draw the reactions that they're observing, the different parts of the water cycle. Then grab that Globe Observer app again and go outside and make your cloud observations. And again, the app walks you through it. It's super easy to do. And then come back inside and we're going to make cloud mobiles. And so they'll have examples of different cloud types. So if you go to the next screen, we'll see on the left side are the materials that you'll need to make the cloud mobiles. So there's paper that you can trace onto that styrofoam tray, and you cut those out. There's some wooden skewers to help hang the mobile, and then there's mylar strips to illustrate rain. And yeah, you put it all together, and then the right side picture shows you the finished product where you can take the mobile home and hang it up to remind you of all of the cloud observations that you've made. So that was really fast, just to give you an idea of what's in that guide. So I'll pass back to Teresa.
Okay, and next slide. Yep, so we've got lots of games and resources to support your summer programs. The iREAD program, whether you're doing iREAD, which is level up at your library with games and puzzles, or any kind of fun STEAM activity for your summer program. So we've got a Globe Observer library guide that's got sample programs from libraries. Rose had written this wonderful blog with even more information about how she does her programs that we've got under the cloud programs as an example. We've got a link to that, and lots of resources like videos of scientists talking about why to do these observations, how to do these observations. So go there. We have a link. Andrew actually got a link up before this that links to the guide that Alicia just talked about some activities from. And in the next day or two, there's going to be one with the games section of it that it's going to go up there. But if you go to the next slide, I was going to share one game that's called Habitats and Hideouts. And this relates to the mosquito habitat Mapper tool. And so everything you need to do, the citizen science observations, is in the app, and there's some of the screens it walks you through how to do the observation. And really the things you need to do is to find water sources where still water is collected, where a mosquito mom might lay her eggs, which become adult mosquitoes. And it can be as small as a bottle cap of water, and cryptic places you might not even think about where a mosquito can breed, a tree hole, a bottle cap. I find them in my planter. You can find them inside or outside, any places where water might collect. So it could be inside your library or outside. So really finding a place where water is collected and noting whether or not there are mosquito larvae, these little wriggling, tiny little things, and clear that standing water. If you want to go further, you can get a clip-on microscope. We're going to do a webinar in April that'll give you a more detailed look at how to do mosquito habitat mapper. But if you go to the next slide, mosquito habitats and hideouts game, it's to learn about all the different places where water collects and mosquito moms can lay their eggs. And we've got different ways to play it. You can play it as standard bingo. You can play it as a name that habitat, where one person, they draws a habitat name, they describe it without saying it, or sketch that habitat where they draw it and people guess what that habitat is. So you can download the PDFs of the activity guide, the playing boards. There are 30 different boards, call sheets, slides, all from that website. And if you go to the next slide, there are other variations on habitats and hideouts. We have had people use it as a scavenger hunt. Los Angeles Public Library did a scavenger hunt inside the library where they posted photos of mosquito habitats, and you went around to find those, and you can't see it in this picture, but those little pink Post-its, within those they had a photo of a larva. So not all of them had mosquito larvae, some did, some didn't, and they had photos of the 3 main genera of larvae, mosquito larvae, that are what you find the key in the app leads you to. And these are 3 that are the most medically important: Aedes, Culex, and always forget the third one, but Rose, we need a dance for the mosquitoes to learn those names too. So I'm going to challenge you to that. You can use the call sheet from Bingo to go out and do a habitats and hideouts walk around the library, find those surprising places where water may have collected. You can couple it with the Zika zine and download the coloring pages that go with that include how to draw Wanda is one of the mosquitoes in the Zika zine, and it is about Globe Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper is a citizen science done in this, and you can create your own mosquito pictures and stories. So I think, Claire, I'm handing it back to you now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Teresa. All right, so we just have a few minutes left, but we'd love to hear from you in the chat. How might your library implement these activities in your summer programming, whether you're doing the CSLP Color Your World or the iREAD's Level Up with games? What resonated with you in these? We'd love to hear in the chat. All right, searching for colors outside. That's a lot of fun. Pixels and the cloud programs. Awesome. All right, we have the ideas coming in. Cloud dance. That was so fun, Rose. Thank you so much for leading us through that. All right, during weekly Science Rocks programs, pixels, a lot of folks are saying they like that pixel activity. And yes, like Teresa said, join the StarNet community if you haven't already. And if you do that, share photos, tell us how it went. We'd love to just get your feedback on these activities. Awesome. Yep. The ideas just keep coming in. So definitely bookmark that link bank that Beatrice has been dropping in the chat, because that has links to all of these activities. And thanks, Beatrice also just put a link to the certificate of attendance. If you want to get, 1 hour of credit for professional development, you do have that official certificate of attendance. Awesome. And folks have already had a few questions that they've responded to in the chat, including for that cloud mobile. If styrofoam gives you the ick, you can do cardboard or something heavier. You just want to make sure it's heavy enough that it'll hang. I think just paper would be a little too wispy, but you want something that'll give it a little bit of weight. Awesome. So you can keep putting your ideas in the chat for how you might implement these activities this summer. And we'll stick around for a few minutes for any more questions that folks have. Awesome. All right. Well, big thank you to all of our presenters. This has been just a phenomenal gathering of resources. My contact information is in that link bank. So if you have questions, you can email me and I can be sure to forward your question on to any of the appropriate facilitators. Yeah. Awesome. People are saying they got lots of good ideas. We are so happy to be able to present this as part of the StarNet webinar series. And thank you so much, Teresa, for reaching out and organizing this with all of our facilitators. All right. I think we'll stick around for one more minute in case anyone has a question coming through the chat.
We love working with StarNet libraries, and Claire, I'll send you the information to send out for the mosquito webinar in April. It'll be related to 1,000,000 acts of science. So it'll be related to Citizen Science Month and SciStarter.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be sure to promote that webinar. It's always a pleasure working with you. All right. And with that, I hope you all have a good rest of your day and have fun planning out your summers.
Thank you.
Thank you.